What's going on, Fit for the Kingdom family? Guys, we are officially in December, and that means Christmas is on the way, which is why I'm sitting in my living room right now with my tree behind me, which the lights apparently are not as bright as I thought they were and compared to my studio lighting that I've got set up. But I thought it'd be cool to bring this episode to you in front of the tree, because it's Christmas time. It's the holidays, guys. It is the most wonderful time of the year for some people, but for other people, it's not so much. In fact, this time of the year can bring about a lot of emotions that aren't joy, that aren't wonder, that aren't awe. And today on this episode, we're going to talk about the topic of good grief. Good grief. And I hope it'll help you if you've ever gone through anything, or if you got something missing, or maybe this time of year isn't your favorite. I hope it'll help you get through this season, not just get through it, not just survive, but thrive in it. And I can't wait to get into this topic. I got some scripture, I got some encouragement, and hopefully this will help you get a little bit fitter in the area of your emotions and your spiritual walk with Jesus. So without further ado, let's jump right in. All right, guys, so we're going to come from this perspective of not everybody during the holidays is having a good time. Not everybody during the holidays has everybody a part of their life still, and that's okay. I think that one of the misconceptions is that this time of the year brings joy and hope and good things to everybody. And what I've learned in my life is that's just not the case. And well, Graham, what do you mean? Well, not everybody in these seasons can look back on their lives and remember good things. I think that this season, especially for us adults, it is a good time because it carries with it a lot of nostalgia. A lot of, if you think about it, during this season, a lot of people are looking back at what they had when they grew up. I know for me, I look back at the traditions. I look back at some of the things that we did as a family. I look back at the gifts. I look back at the Christmas season. I look back at those things and I go, wow, what an incredible, time. The problem is that I also have experienced a lot of loss in my life. And so I see those moments and they immediately bring to my thought process of who's not there. So this last couple weeks ago was Thanksgiving, and we went home. We live in Texas, and we went back to Alabama, where we're from, to visit family and things like that for Thanksgiving. And one of the things that we like to do, we don't do every year, but I think we're going to start. But one of the things that we did this year is we went to a place called Bellingrath Gardens the day after Thanksgiving. Bellingrath Gardens is in Mobile, and it is this incredible piece of property. It's massive. Where they put Christmas lights all over. So during the normal year, it is a garden of like flowers and land. It's just really well kept. It's super nice, and you can go any time of the year. But during the Christmas season, so the day after Thanksgiving until I believe sometime after the new year, they put Christmas lights all over the property. I mean, it takes you 2 hours to walk the entirety of the property to see all of the lights that they put out. It's incredible. It is so much fun. And it is something that I and my wife have done our whole lives. It is something that is very much a tradition for many families that live in that area. It's very much a family thing. And it's something that I went to a ton of times growing up with my family and with my friends, and same with my wife. And we were there just this last week. We thought, how cool would it be to bring our kids to this event, to this place, to experience what we experienced growing up. And my 4 kids had a blast. For one of the first and only rare times of their life, they didn't fuss, they didn't cry, they didn't get bored. There was just so much to look at and so much to see. And it was this incredibly beautiful moment for me and my family as it came full circle. My dad was there, my kids were there, my wife was there, my mother-in-law was there. And as we were walking through this incredibly joyful, wonderful Christmas themed moment, I had several times where I could not help but miss those that weren't there, but wonder what it would be like if my mom was still on this earth and got to look at her grandchildren as they looked in wonder at all of these incredible things, these beautiful lights. And I couldn't help but wonder what What would it be like if my older brother got to see it? I couldn't help but think, what if my father-in-law were here and he was helping carry my youngest when he got tired of walking? And it truly was this bittersweet moment of, look at how amazing this moment is. But God, something's missing. Man, I just wish they were here. And so while the holiday season does bring opportunity for joy and opportunity for hope and opportunity for wonder, it also carries with it a heaviness and a grief that I think, if not approached well, if not walked through right, we can miss a lot of the good things God has for us. And I don't think this is relegated to the holiday season, but I thought, because we're in the holiday season, what a good time to bring this episode to the table and maybe bring a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of practicality to how maybe we can walk through this season with what I call good grief, because grief is inevitable. As a pastor, I've walked a lot of people through a lot of moments that are hard. I've walked myself, my family, through a lot of moments that are hard. And what I'm learning is that grief is unavoidable. And not only is it unavoidable, it's really something that we should do. We need to lean into. Grief is not something that should be avoided. Grief is not something that needs to be played out to be the bad guy or made out to be the bad guy. Grief is actually our way and God's way of us processing and growing and moving through those hard times, right? And remembering those that we lost. In fact, I've heard it said this way, that grief is the price that we pay for love. And grief is proof that we loved. It's the price we pay for love, and grief is proof that we loved. And so these holiday seasons, if you don't have somebody on earth that used to be here, you have memories of them, and it just makes grief feel a little bit more heavy in the seasons. I know I do. I mentioned it in the story, but to bring context, my mom passed away from cancer in 2016. I would have been 24 years old. We were pregnant with my firstborn at the time, so she did not get to meet him. And I often wonder during this season, I just think about how amazing of a grandmother she would be and how much my kids would love my mom. Man, was she awesome. Life of the party all the time. And so while that is a great thing to remember, there's also the burden of, I'm never going to see that. Another thing I pointed out in the story is that I lost my older brother to gun violence in 2018. So very few short years after I lost my mom, I lost my older brother. And there's a lot that he didn't get to be a part of either. And I often wonder, what would it be like? Where would he be now? What would he be like if he had been here? And lost my father-in-law around that same time, and many, many more. My wife, I wish my wife could jump on. She could tell you too. But for a period of 6 years or so, it felt like we were just losing everybody. And so I come to you not from this pastoral, like fully like pulled away or fully separated from mentality. I really do come from this. I've experienced and constantly experienced this on a daily, yearly, weekly, monthly basis. And there are times, man, where the grief is stronger and it just hits when it wants to hit. And then there's times when the grief is not as strong, and the steps of grief that you hear about, it's a cycle and you go through it all the time. And I'm here not to just talk about grief, but to talk about good grief, because there's a way to grief. And for those of us who know Jesus, there's a good way to grief. And grief can be good because it can, number one, it reminds us that we loved. And I think that has to be encouraging for you today, to know that you grieve because you love. You grieve because somebody you love no longer is here. And I want to encourage you in that, because to be able to love is one of the greatest gifts God has ever given us. To be able to love is one of the best superpowers on this planet. In fact, I was listening to a message today, and the title of it was "Love Makes You Dangerous." You can do a lot more in this world because you love. So I want to encourage you. Number one is, if you're grieving, it's because you loved. And here's my encouragement: don't give up loving. Don't give up loving. The Bible says, do not give up in good doing, because in due time, you will reap a harvest. Do not give up on doing good, because in due time, you're going to reap a harvest. Here's what I'm saying. Don't stop loving because you know it's going to hurt you. Grief is the price we pay for love, and it is proof that we loved. Grief is good because it shows that you have the ability to love. And those who can love only can love because we know that we've been loved by love himself, right? God is love. And because God is love and because he loves you, you are able to love. And because you're able to love, now you have to pay the price of grief. Listen, that should make you slightly encouraged just to know because I loved. If you didn't love, if you didn't grieve and you lost somebody, I'd be a little worried if you didn't grieve and you lost somebody because it means you didn't love. But you did. So take that to heart. You loved. And now that's the price we pay for it. The second thing I'm going to encourage you in talking about good grief comes from like my little mini Bible. I had opened this one since high school. Comes from 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. You have heard this, but I want to shed a little light on it for you today. It says this, starting in verse 13. It says, now, dear brothers and sisters, I'm going to stop there. He's not talking to people who don't know Jesus. He is talking to people who know Jesus. Okay. That's a brother and a sister. Okay. So I'm talking to you, dear brother and sister. We want you to know what will happen to the believers who have died so that you will not grieve like people who have no hope. I'm going to read that again. I want you to know what will happen to the believers who have died so that you will not grieve like people who have no hope. Let me say this. The Bible does not say we will not grieve. It didn't stop there. It didn't say, I want you to know what happens to people when they die so you don't grieve at all. He said, so you don't grieve like. What is he saying? Is there's different types of grieving. For those who don't know the Lord, who have no hope, who have no belief that there's a life after this, they grieve different. They grieve out of a loss. They grieve out of a lack. They grieve out of a wish. But those who have hope, we grieve differently. And our grief is good. Come on. Our grief is good grief. It says this in verse 14, for since we believe that Jesus died and was raised to life again, we also believe that when Jesus returns, God will bring back with him the believers who died. Here's my encouragement for you with those two. Number one, grief is proof that you love. Number two is that because you have hope, because you have Jesus, your grief produces hope. Let me say that again. Because you have Jesus, your grief produces hope. What do I mean? That one day you will see them again. One day you will see their interactions. Like one day I am going to see my mom meet my kids. One day I am going to see those things in eternity. And number one, am I encouraged that I loved? Yes. Number two, I have hope that this is not the end, that death is not permanent because Jesus conquered death when he rose from the dead. Come on. He conquered death when he rose from the dead. So our grief can be good because it produces hope. It produces hope. Now, I'm not going to leave you without some practicals. Okay. We're nearing the end. You know that it encourages you because it's proof that you loved, and good grief produces hope. Some practicals that you can do, guys, during this holiday season. And this is the things that you put into practice that'll make you get fitter in the emotional areas of your life. Remember, we want to get fitter in the areas and we want to get fitter spiritually. We want to get fitter physically. We want to get fitter emotionally. We want to get fitter mentally. We want to get fitter socially. Okay. This is an emotional. Here's how we do it. Just some practicals that I'm going to give you to take with you as you go out throughout the holidays and you're missing those who aren't here. Number one is I want you to embrace the emotions. Embrace them. Guys, if we stuff them down, we're never going to be able to process through them. I remember when my mom passed away, I thought I'd gone through all of them. They said there's 5 that you're going to go through. And I thought I'd gone through all of them, except anger. And I kept telling myself, there's no reason to be angry. She didn't do anything. Like she had cancer, right? No reason to be angry. Well, me and my wife went to the Dollar Theater for a date night, and we were watching, I don't even remember what the movie's called, but it had Will Smith in it. And it was time, love, and death were writing letters or something. And anyway, they had 3 characters that represented these people. And one of them comes up to one of the characters in the movie who has cancer and has not told his family. And the story of my mom was her cancer had come back and she hadn't told anybody until her arm had swollen up, and we noticed and we took her to the doctor. And then she passed away 3 days later or 4 days later. She goes up to this man who's withholding this information from his family, same situation as my mom. And she goes, you think that you're protecting them by not telling them. But what you're actually doing is you're taking away their ability to tell you goodbye. And boy, I told you I lost it in that movie theater. I punched the back of the seat. I got up. I walked out. I was ticked. I was pissed off, man. I had to like pull over. I got in the car. Amy followed me. I'm driving. I got so mad I couldn't see. I had tears coming out. And I was furious that my mom would do it that way and not let me say goodbye. I missed it. I didn't get to say goodbye because I was called and the next day she was gone. Hear me. Embrace the emotion when it comes. If you feel angry, go off and get angry. If you feel sad, go off and cry. If you're feeling hurt, go off and take care of it. Embrace the emotions is number one. Number one, how are we going to deal with it? We embrace the emotion. Whatever emotion it is, just embrace it. It's okay. It's not a sin. It's fine. Process it well. Get with somebody who you can process it with. My wife's great at this because she's been through it as well. The second thing that I want you to do, and this is it, there's only two. Number one, embrace the emotion. Number two, we know this season is hard, so set aside personal time for you to remember them. Every year, my brother's birthday is on November 30th. And every year, my brother loved going to the gym and just doing, bodybuilding stuff. And every year, I go into the gym and I do a pump sesh for him. It's not working, but I do one for him. I put on his favorite music. I do his favorite lifts. And I do it for him. And I do it every year because it's me setting aside time to remember. Because if I plan my grief moments, they won't take me by surprise in other times of the year and throughout this hard season. Guys, listen, this season is hard, but because we have Jesus, we get to have good grief because good grief means we have hope. And I'm praying for you guys that you will have all the hope this season, all the hope this holiday time, and that you'll be able to remember those you've lost with hope because it's not over yet. And that you'll also remember, it's proof that you had a great relationship with somebody awesome and you loved them. Guys, thank you for joining in today's episode. So glad you came. If you liked the episode, make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube or on the podcast or whatever, and tell somebody about it. And if you know anybody who's grieving this holiday season, share the episode with them. I hope it encouraged you. I hope that it gave you some practical tools, and I hope it'll help you get fitter in the area of your emotions. I'll see you on the next episode.